So greetings from Pennsylvania once again. It's time for another French and Indian War video, because I'm still working on getting ready for the Forbes Expedition back out to Fort Duquesne. But I still have a few videos to do before we do that expedition, some more biographies. So like this video is about John Forbes, the general in charge of that expedition, and I got to do a video on his basically second in command, Henry Bouquet. I do want to do a video on the Treaty of Easton as well, that occurred in 1758 during the Forbes campaign, because it does play a part in the success of that campaign. But this video will just be about John Forbes. And as has been mentioned already, and as you probably know, John Forbes was in charge of what's known as the Forbes Expedition or the Forbes Campaign that took place starting in the summer of 1758 all the way through the fall and winter to try and take Fort Duquesne on the forks of the Ohio, what is today Western PA. Of course, a couple years earlier in 1755, General Braddock attempted to take Fort Duquesne, and we already did a video on that, and that ended absolutely miserably for the British. But in 1758, Forbes was commissioned to make a second attempt to take Fort Duquesne, and they did learn from the previous mistakes that Braddock made. But a lot of that's for the video when we do the Forbes Expedition. This video is just more learning about who John Forbes is, or was. Get a little bit of background history on the man himself. So John Forbes was born in 1707 and died in 1759. So that date should seem a little familiar because the Forbes Expedition was in 1758, so he died literally just not too long after the expedition. We'll talk about that. It's kind of sad in a way, because during the whole expedition he was seriously ill, and then pretty much probably died as a result of the campaign. But he was from Scotland, born in Scotland. His dad was also named John Forbes, and his mom was Elizabeth Graham. But his dad actually died before Forbes was born, so he actually never knew his father. He had several older brothers and sisters. I think the older brothers got the family inheritance, so our John Forbes didn't really grow up with hardly any money. But at some point his uncle Duncan got him a commission in the army, got his military career going. He did get married. His wife's name was Anna, and they also had a daughter named Anna as well then. And he became a surgeon in 1729. He became a surgeon in the Royal Scots Grey company was called. He studied medicine in Edinburgh, so kind of his way he got into the army was through medicine. He was a surgeon at first. It's kind of interesting. He starts out as a surgeon and then it ends up leading the campaign to take Fort Duquesne over here in America. And then in 1735 he became what's called a cornet. Maybe I'll put the name down below here. Never really heard of that before I studied for this video, but it's the lowest grade commission you can get in the British cavalry, I think that's how it went. And the way you got these commissions and moved up into higher ranks is you had to pay. You had to pay money to move up higher in the ranks. That's the way it was back then. It's like a paid commission. So he had very little money, so that's why he had, I guess his first commission was the lowest grade. Cornet. Sounds like an instrument, but I guess it's actually, I don't know if that level of office exists anymore, but that's what he became. That's his first that was his first officer position, I guess you could say. And then from there his military career moved slowly upwards. Like I said, since he didn't have a lot of money, he couldn't really afford to buy a higher commission in the army or the cavalry. But he was involved in some wars. In the 1740s he fought in what was known as the Austrian War of Succession. At one point he was captured by the enemy. He was even blamed for the loss of one of the battles there. The British lost one of the battles. He was the one guy tried to blame him, and he had to defend himself in a trial. It wasn't Forbes' fault. It's actually someone else's fault. But that's the way it goes. When somebody messes up royally and loses a battle, they gotta try to find someone to blame. The one guy tried to blame Forbes for it, but in the end, he was not convicted of doing anything wrong. So by 1757, he had been promoted to colonel by now. And of course, the French and Indian War has already started back in 1754. But in 1757 is when Forbes became involved. Initially, he was sent to Nova Scotia with a bunch of other soldiers, about 5,000 soldiers, to try and take Louisburg, but that mission failed. And shortly after that, he was promoted to Brigadier General. Seems a little bit odd, you know, you're involved in a battle that results in a failure and you get promoted, but that's the way it was. And that's when he was placed in charge of the campaign to try and take Fort Duquesne once again. So that's just a quick, brief little history of who John Forbes was, a little bit of his military career, his background a little bit. We'll talk just a little bit about his involvement in the Forbes campaign itself. You're just checking the area out here a little bit. There's an area here. I'm here at Blue Marsh Lake, not too far from home. There's an area I wanted to sit, but it looks like they have it closed off, which is kind of a bummer. Yeah, restricted area, keep out. And up there it says, notice, cliff area closed. It's like they're trying to shut me down. Because that's my name, Cliff. But they're not referring to me, obviously. Yeah, it's a nice place to sit up there along the cliffs, but anyway. Someone probably got hurt. And then they just close the whole area down. That's what happens. Anyway, back to John Forbes. Yeah, so the Forbes campaign got kind of a late start in that summer of 1758. That's kind of the way it usually goes with those campaigns. They have a date that they plan to start, and there's, you know, setbacks and delays. Same with the Forbes campaign, because they didn't actually get out to Fort Duquesne until like November, which is much later than they wanted to. Because usually the campaigns would occur during the summer. They didn't want to be out there during the winter months when the snow and ice would come and stuff like that. But yeah, unfortunately for Forbes, he was very ill the whole time during the campaign, and he relied heavily on Henry Bouquet, who was kind of like his second in command for the whole expedition. Henry kind of led most of it. He was kind of in charge of a lot of the construction of the road that they built. They built a road, just like Braddock's Road, there was Forbes Road. They built a whole new road out to Fort Duquesne. Why didn't they use Braddock's Road? That'll be for when we talk about Forbes Expedition. There's a whole reason for that, which I think I talked about when we did the video on George Washington. But yeah, they're pretty sure he had dysentery, or some people thought he even had like stomach cancer during the whole campaign. So he was miserable that whole time. If you could look up dysentery, what it does to you. I mean, he wasn't doing so well, to say the least. And to have to travel through the rugged terrain, through what is now western Pennsylvania, and rough roads, you know, it was not a pleasant time for him. So but he did make it to Fort Duquesne, was there, because the French had abandoned the fort prior to the British arriving, and we'll talk about that. That largely had to do with what's called the Treaty of Easton. They had lost, the Indians were no longer, the Native American tribes were no longer allied with the French, and that's what they relied on a lot for their, you could say, their battle power in some ways. Because even during the defeat of Braddock at the Battle of Monongahela, there was only about 300 of the soldiers were French, about 600 some were Native Americans. So a large number of the troops that were fighting for them out at Fort Duquesne were the Indians or the Native Americans. So when they lost that support, then all of a sudden the British vastly outnumbered them. They knew they didn't stand a chance, so they abandoned and burned the fort before the British actually arrived. So the British, you know, Forbes and his men didn't actually have to fight to take the fort. It was already been abandoned. Then after the taking of Fort Duquesne, Forbes did make it back to Philadelphia. He was in pretty rough condition. Like I said, like he either had dysentery, or some people think he had stomach cancer, but he died shortly after arriving back in Philly, and he was buried in Christ Church Cemetery. I'd like to get there someday, because I think that's the one that Ben Franklin is buried at too, so that's where he's buried. Maybe we'll make a video of that, get there someday to his burial. I mean, he's going to Philadelphia. I do not enjoy driving in the Philly area as much, as you guys know, but yeah. So that's the life of John Forbes. Unfortunately, you know, he didn't really reap the benefits of that victory, you know, taking Fort Duquesne. Like I say, he died shortly after. But yeah, that's life sometimes, you know. All right. Yeah, so in some ways it seems like his life is cut a little bit short. You know, if he had lived beyond 1759, no doubt he would have received a much greater military commission because of taking of Fort Duquesne. He never really got to reap the benefits of that victory, unfortunately for him. But yeah, just another little short biography here. Some of these people involved in the French and Indian War. Like, I want to get him done, and then his second in command, Henry Bouquet, before we actually do the Forbes campaign, that video, which we're probably going to split into two parts. I've decided to, just for sake of time. I am hoping to get the first part done not too far from now, going from Fort Carlisle to Fort Bedford, out there in Bedford County. All right, as always, thanks for coming along, and hopefully we'll see you on the next one.